For many people, they looked like the perfect couple. They lived in a beautiful home, attended important social events, and were always smiling whenever cameras pointed in their direction. Friends often said they were lucky to have found each other. Their marriage seemed strong, and their life appeared to be filled with comfort, respect, and success. But the truth was very different from what people saw. The millionaire had spent years building a successful business, and everyone admired his confidence. Newspapers often wrote about his achievements, while business partners praised his smart decisions. Whenever people talked about success, his name was always part of the conversation. Very few people knew that his wife had quietly stood beside him through every difficult moment. Before the expensive suits, luxury cars, and grand parties, she had supported him when money was limited and the future was uncertain. She believed in his dreams even when others laughed at them. She managed their home, encouraged him after failures, and celebrated every small victory that helped build the life they now enjoyed. She never wanted attention for any of it. She believed that love was about standing together, not competing for praise. Whenever someone congratulated her husband, she smiled with pride and never reminded anyone how much he had sacrificed. Seeing him succeed once made her happy. As the years passed, however, things slowly changed. Business meetings became more frequent. Late-night phone calls became normal. Weekend trips that were once spent together were replaced with sudden work schedules. Whenever she asked simple questions, he always had a quick answer prepared. It was just another meeting. The clients needed more time. "I'll make it up to you next week." At first, she believed every word. She trusted the man she had married. After all, trust was the foundation of every strong relationship. But small details began to worry her. He no longer shared stories about his day. His phone was always locked and never left his side. He smiled while reading messages, but quickly put the phone away whenever she entered the room. The distance between them did not happen overnight. It grew little by little until their conversations became short and empty. Even when they sat at the same dinner table, it felt as if they lived in different worlds. Friends noticed the change, but stayed silent. People in their social circle loved gossip, but nobody wanted to challenge a wealthy and powerful businessman. Instead, whispers quietly spread through expensive restaurants, private clubs, and charity events. Some claimed he had been seen with another woman. Others believed it was only a misunderstanding. His wife heard those rumors too, but she refused to believe strangers without proof. She respected herself too much to accuse someone without knowing the truth. Instead of following him or creating loud arguments, she simply paid attention. She noticed new habits, unusual expenses, and meetings that never appeared on his business calendar. She remained calm, even when her heart told her something was wrong. One afternoon, while organizing invitations that had arrived at their home, she found a beautifully designed envelope addressed to both of them. It was an invitation to the city's most prestigious annual ball, an event attended by business leaders, public figures, and respected families. Every year, the evening attracted hundreds of important guests. Missing the event usually became a topic of conversation for weeks. She placed the invitation on the table without saying anything. Later that evening, her husband glanced at it and casually said that he probably would not attend because of an important business commitment. His answer sounded natural, but something about it did not feel honest. A few days later, while having lunch with an old family friend, the conversation unexpectedly changed. The friend hesitated before speaking. "I wasn't sure if I should tell you," the friend said quietly, "but people are saying your husband plans to attend the ball with another woman." The words felt heavy. For a brief moment, everything around her seemed unusually quiet. She could have become angry. She could have cried. She could have confronted him the moment he walked through the front door. Instead, she thanked her friend for being honest. When she returned home, she sat alone in the living room for a long time. She thought about every year of their marriage, every promise they had made, and every challenge they had overcome together. The pain was real. So was the disappointment. But she refused to let heartbreak control her decisions. That evening, her husband returned home acting as though nothing had happened. He spoke about work, answered a few emails, and never once mentioned the upcoming ball. She watched him quietly. For the first time in years, she realized she was no longer looking at the man she thought she knew. Still, she said nothing. Silence, she believed, could sometimes reveal more than an argument. The next morning, after he left for work, she made a simple decision. She would attend the ball, not to fight, not to embarrass anyone, not to create a public scene. She wanted to face the truth with dignity and let everyone see her exactly as she was, calm, confident, and unafraid. Whatever happened that night would change more than one marriage. It would reveal the true character of everyone involved. And without realizing it, her husband had already made the biggest mistake of his life. She woke up feeling different. The sadness was still there, but it no longer controlled her thoughts. She looked out the window as the sun slowly filled the garden with light and reminded herself that difficult moments often revealed a person's true strength. She knew the annual ball was only a few days away. Instead of spending those days worrying about what people might say, she focused on herself. She returned to small habits that had once brought her peace. She enjoyed quiet mornings with a cup of tea, took long walks through the neighborhood, and spent time reading books she had forgotten during the busy years of supporting her husband's career. Little by little, her confidence returned. She also visited a trusted tailor who had designed many of her dresses over the years. When asked what kind of gown she wanted for the evening, she smiled gently. "I don't need the most expensive dress," she said. "I only want something that feels like me." The tailor nodded with understanding. Together they chose a timeless design that was graceful instead of flashy. It was elegant without trying too hard to impress anyone. For the first time in a long while, she looked in the mirror and saw not just a wife, but a woman who still had her own identity. Meanwhile, her husband seemed unusually relaxed. He believed his plan was working perfectly. At home, he continued pretending that business meetings were keeping him busy. He rarely stayed for dinner and often returned late at night. His phone never stopped ringing. Whenever it buzzed, he stepped into another room before answering. She no longer asked where he had been. His silence had already answered every question she once wanted to ask. Around the city, excitement for the annual ball continued to grow. It was the event everyone talked about. Wealthy families prepared for weeks. Business leaders looked forward to making new connections. Reporters planned to cover every important arrival. People also continued whispering about the millionaire. Many believed he would appear with another woman. Others refused to believe someone with such a respected public image would take such a risk. The rumors spread quickly, but no one knew the full story. One afternoon, while shopping for a few final accessories, she unexpectedly met an older woman who had known her for years. "You look wonderful," the woman said warmly. "Thank you," she replied with a smile. "I hope we'll see you at the ball." There was a short pause before she answered, "You will." The older woman smiled with genuine happiness. "I'm glad. People have always respected you. Never forget that." Those simple words stayed with her long after they said goodbye. She realized respect was something that could never be bought with money. It was earned through years of kindness, honesty, and quiet strength. As the evening of the ball grew closer, her husband became more focused on his own plans. He ordered a new suit, arranged transportation, and spent long hours away from home. He still never mentioned attending the event. He believed she would remain hidden from the public, too embarrassed to appear. That assumption gave him confidence. He had no idea she had already accepted the invitation. The afternoon before the event, she carefully opened the garment bag holding her dress. The fabric reflected the soft light coming through the window. It wasn't covered with expensive decorations or bright colors. Its beauty came from its simplicity. She gently placed it back and took a deep breath. This evening was not about proving she was more beautiful than anyone else. It was about proving that dignity could never be replaced. As the day finally arrived, the entire city seemed full of excitement. Luxury cars moved through busy streets toward the grand ballroom. Cameras were already waiting outside. Guests stepped onto the red carpet wearing elegant gowns and tailored suits. Inside, soft music filled the room while crystal lights reflected across polished floors. The atmosphere felt magical. One by one, respected guests greeted each other with warm smiles and friendly conversations. Then another luxury car arrived. The millionaire stepped out first. Standing beside him was a woman many people had been whispering about for weeks. She wore an expensive dress and smiled confidently as cameras flashed around them. Some guests exchanged surprised looks. Others quietly looked away. No one spoke openly, but almost everyone noticed. The millionaire walked into the ballroom as though nothing was unusual. He greeted business partners, shook hands with important guests, and introduced a woman beside him with complete confidence. He believed he controlled the evening. He believed his wife would never walk through those doors. Inside the ballroom, conversations continued, but many guests kept glancing toward the entrance. A few quietly asked the same question. Will she come? Minutes passed. The music continued. Another elegant car slowly stopped outside. The driver stepped out and opened the door. She appeared with calm confidence. There was no anger on her face, no sign of panic. She simply stepped onto the red carpet with quiet grace. Her elegant gown, gentle smile, and natural confidence immediately caught everyone's attention. The photographers who had nearly packed away their cameras quickly turned back toward the entrance. Guests inside the ballroom noticed the sudden movement. One by one, conversation stopped, heads turned. The room slowly fell silent as everyone realized a millionaire's wife had arrived. And in that unforgettable moment, the evening no longer belonged to the man who thought he had planned everything. It belonged to the woman he had underestimated. For a few long seconds, the ballroom became almost completely silent. The music continued playing in the background, but hardly anyone paid attention to it. Every pair of eyes turned toward the entrance. The guests were expecting drama, tears, or an angry confrontation. Instead, they saw something completely different. She walked into the room with quiet confidence. Her posture was calm, her smile was gentle, and every step showed that she had come with self-respect, not revenge. She greeted the staff who welcomed her at the door and thanked them with genuine kindness. Several people who had known her for years immediately walked over to shake her hand. "It is wonderful to see you," one guest said warmly. "We've missed seeing you at recent events," another added. She smiled and thanked them without mentioning anything about her personal life. Across the room, her husband noticed the growing crowd around her. His confident smile slowly disappeared. He had expected whispers and embarrassment. Instead, people were naturally gathering around his wife, asking how she had been and telling her how happy they were to see her again. The woman standing beside him also noticed the change. Only a few minutes earlier, many guests had wanted to meet her because she had arrived with the millionaire. Now those same conversations had quietly ended as attention shifted toward his wife. She tried to hide her discomfort, but it was becoming obvious. The millionaire attempted to continue introducing business partners to the woman beside him, yet several of those partners politely excused themselves. They walked across the ballroom to greet his wife instead. She welcomed every person with warmth and respect. She never spoke badly about her husband. She never criticized anyone. That quiet confidence impressed people far more than loud words ever could. An older businessman smiled as he spoke with her. "I still remember the charity project you organized years ago," he said. "Many families receive help because of your hard work." She thanked him modestly. It was a team effort. He laughed gently. "Maybe, but good leadership always begins with one person." Nearby, several guests overheard the conversation. Many of them suddenly remembered similar moments. They remembered community events she had supported, scholarship programs she had quietly funded, families she had helped without asking for recognition. For years, she had worked behind the scenes while allowing her husband to enjoy most of the public attention. Now people were beginning to remember who she really was. The atmosphere inside the ballroom slowly changed. Instead of discussing expensive jewelry or luxury cars, guests found themselves talking about kindness, generosity, and character. Meanwhile, the millionaire felt increasingly uncomfortable. His carefully planned evening was slipping away. He approached a group of business associates, hoping to regain control of the conversations. Before he could begin speaking, one of them smiled politely. "We were just telling your wife how much we admire her community work." He forced a smile. "Yes, she's always enjoyed those projects." His answer sounded empty. Everyone standing nearby noticed it. His wife simply nodded without correcting him. She had no interest in proving herself through arguments. Her actions already spoke louder than words. As dinner was served, guests took their seats around beautifully decorated tables. By coincidence, several respected community leaders invited her to sit with them. The seat placed beside her husband remained empty longer than expected. People noticed. No one mentioned it aloud, but the silence carried its own message. During the meal, conversations continued naturally. One guest asked how she had managed to stay so calm despite the pressure that often came with public life. She smiled before answering. "I've learned that difficult times show us who we really are. Anyone can smile when life is easy." Real character appears during hard moments. Several people nodded in agreement. Her words were simple, yet they carried real meaning. Across the table, another guest quietly said, "That's something everyone should remember." At another table, the millionaire's companion sat quietly. The excitement she had expected was gone. Instead of admiration, she noticed uncertain glances. No one treated her rudely, but she could feel the distance. People seemed far more interested in speaking with a wife than with her. For the first time that evening, she appeared unsure of herself. The millionaire noticed it too. He looked across the ballroom at his wife. She was laughing softly during a conversation with longtime friends. She looked peaceful, not because she had won a battle, but because she had stopped carrying the weight of pretending everything was perfect. As dessert was served, the host of the evening stepped onto the stage to thank everyone for attending. He spoke about the importance of community service and recognized several guests who had spent years helping local charities. Then he smiled as he looked across the room. There is one person whose generosity has quietly touched many lives without asking for recognition. People followed his gaze. It rested on the millionaire's wife. A wave of applause filled the ballroom. She looked genuinely surprised. She had never expected public recognition. She slowly stood, thanked everyone with a warm smile, and walked toward the stage. The applause grew even louder. Her husband remained frozen in his chair. The woman beside him lowered her eyes. Neither of them had expected this moment. As she reached the stage, the host handed her the microphone. The ballroom became completely silent once again. Hundreds of guests waited to hear what she would say. She looked around the room, took a calm breath, and smiled with quiet confidence. Everyone sensed that the next few minutes would be remembered long after the music ended. She stood quietly on the stage for a few seconds, holding the microphone with steady hands. The ballroom was completely silent. Hundreds of guests watched her, waiting to hear what she would say. She looked around the room with a calm smile. "Thank you," she began. "I truly didn't expect this honor tonight." Her voice was gentle and clear. "I've always believed that helping others doesn't need applause. If we are lucky enough to have something to give, whether it is time, kindness, or support, then we should give it without expecting anything in return." The audience listened carefully. Many people nodded as she spoke. She continued, "Life has taught me that success is not measured by money, expensive homes, or business achievements. Real success is measured by how we treat people when no one is watching." Her words filled the room with quiet emotion. She wasn't accusing anyone. She wasn't raising her voice. She was simply sharing what she had learned through experience. "I've spent many years supporting dreams," she said. "Some dreams were my own, and some belonged to people I loved. I never regretted giving my time, my energy, or my encouragement because I believe that true partnerships are built on trust and respect." Several guests exchanged thoughtful looks. Those who had known the couple for years understood the deeper meaning behind her words. She paused for a moment before continuing. "Sometimes life changes in ways we never expect. People we trust make choices that hurt us. Those moments are painful, but they also give us an opportunity." The room remained completely still. "We can choose anger," she said softly, "or we can choose dignity. We can spend our life trying to embarrass others, or we can protect our own peace and continue moving forward." A warm round of applause broke out before she had even finished speaking. She smiled and waited until the room became quiet again. "I chose to come here tonight because I didn't want fear or disappointment to decide my future. I wanted to remind myself that no difficult situation can take away my values unless I allow it." Her husband lowered his eyes. For the first time that evening, he looked uncomfortable in front of the people whose respect he had worked so hard to earn. She never mentioned his name. She never pointed toward him. She never even looked in his direction. Yet everyone understood exactly what she meant. After finishing her speech, she thanked the audience once again and returned the microphone to the host. The applause that followed was louder than before. Many guests stood to their feet. Some wiped tears from their eyes. Others simply smiled with admiration. As she walked back toward her seat, people reached out to shake her hand. Several women quietly thanked her for her honesty. One elderly guest said, "That may be the most graceful speech I've ever heard." She simply smiled. "Thank you." Across the ballroom, her husband remained seated. He noticed that business partners who had once rushed to greet him were now speaking warmly with his wife. People respected the way she had handled such a difficult situation, not with anger, not with revenge, but with honesty and self-control. The woman who had arrived beside him also seemed deeply uncomfortable. She had expected a glamorous evening. Instead, she found herself watching someone in genuine respect without saying a single cruel word. She quietly looked around the room. The smiles she had hoped to receive were now directed toward the wife. She slowly realized something important. Attention and admiration were not the same thing. Attention could disappear quickly. Respect lasted much longer. As the evening continued, guests naturally gathered around the wife. Some shared stories of how she had once helped their families. Others thanked her for supporting local schools and community programs years earlier. Many admitted they had never known how much work she had done behind the scenes. She listened to every story with humility. Whenever someone praised her, she quickly thanked the volunteers and friends who had worked beside her. She refused to take all the credit for herself. That simple habit impressed people even more. Meanwhile, the millionaire found himself standing alone near one of the large windows. For years, he had believed success came from power, money, and influence. Tonight showed him something different. Character could never be replaced by wealth. A close business associate quietly walked over to him. After a long silence, the man spoke. "You built an impressive company." The millionaire nodded. "But tonight," the associate continued, "I think everyone discovered who brought strength to your life." The words were not spoken with anger. They were simply honest. The millionaire had no answer. Later in the evening, music filled the ballroom once again. Couples returned to the dance floor. Conversations became lighter. The uncomfortable tension slowly disappeared. She accepted kind word from guests, thanked the organizers for a beautiful evening, and enjoyed several conversations with old friends she had not seen in years. For the first time in a long while, she felt free, not because everything had been repaired, but because she no longer needed to pretend that everything was perfect. When the evening finally came to an end, she collected her coat and quietly walked toward the exit. Several guests stopped her one last time to wish her well. She thanked every one of them with genuine warmth. Outside, the cool night air felt peaceful. She took one slow breath and looked up at the stars. Behind her, the ballroom lights still shined brightly. But deep inside, she knew the brightest part of the evening had not been the decorations or the celebration. It had been discovering that dignity, honesty, and quiet strength could speak louder than any public argument ever could. And although the night was ending, a completely new chapter of her life was only beginning. The morning after the ball, the city was still talking about what had happened. Friends called one another to discuss the unforgettable evening. Newspapers and online magazines shared photos from the event. But what people remembered most was not the expensive decorations or elegant clothing. They remembered the quiet strength of one woman who had faced a painful situation with dignity. She woke up early, opened the curtains, and allowed the morning sunlight to fill her home. For the first time in many months, she felt a deep sense of peace. The problems in her marriage had not disappeared overnight, but something inside her had changed. She was no longer waiting for someone else to decide her happiness. As she enjoyed a quiet breakfast, her phone began to ring. Friends, relatives, and people she had not spoken to in years reached out with kind messages. They thanked her for inspiring them and admired the calm way she had handled such a difficult moment. She appreciated every message but stayed humble. She simply thanked everyone for their support and wished them well. Later that afternoon, her husband returned home much earlier than usual. He stood at the front door for several moments before finally walking inside. The house was unusually quiet. He found her sitting in the living room with a book in her hands. For a few seconds, neither of them spoke. Finally, he broke the silence. "I've been thinking about everything." She gently closed the book and looked at him. She did not interrupt. She allowed him to speak. "I made choices that hurt you," he admitted quietly. "I kept believing success gave me the right to ignore the people who stood beside me. I didn't realize what I was losing until last night." His voice carried regret. She listened with respect. When he finished, she answered calmly, "I supported you because I believed in our future together. I never expected a perfect life. I only expected honesty." He lowered his head. There was nothing he could say to change the past. After a long pause, she continued, Trust takes years to build and only moments to break. Whether it can ever be rebuilt depends on actions, not promises. Her words were firm but not cruel. She was no longer interested in arguments. She wanted peace more than anything else. Over the following weeks, they spent time discussing their future with honesty. Some conversations were difficult. Others were filled with long periods of silence. They both understood that healing could never happen in a single day. During that same time, the woman who had attended the ball with the millionaire quietly stepped away from his life. She realized she had become part of a situation that had caused pain to others. Without public drama or blame, she chose to move forward with her own life. As the weeks turned into months, the millionaire also began changing his priorities. He spent less time chasing public attention and more time reflecting on the decisions that had shaped his life. He became more involved in community projects that he had once ignored. People noticed the effort. Some believed he had learned an important lesson. Others remained cautious. He understood that rebuilding trust would take patience. Meanwhile, his wife focused on creating a future that belonged to her. She expanded the charity work she had quietly supported for years. She organized educational programs, helped local families, and encouraged young people to follow their dreams. This time, she no longer stayed completely behind the scenes, not because she wanted fame, but because she realized her experience could encourage others facing difficult moments in life. Many people who met her were surprised by her kindness. They expected someone filled with bitterness. Instead, they found someone who believed that pain should never stop a person from showing compassion. One afternoon, months after the famous ball, she received another invitation to a public event honoring community leaders. She smiled as she read it. This invitation felt different. She was no longer attending as someone's wife. She was being recognized for her own work, her own values, and her own achievements. When she arrived at the event, many familiar faces greeted her warmly. People respected her not because of wealth or social status, but because of the way she treated others. That respect had become her greatest success. Looking around the room, she realized how much her life had changed. The fear she once carried had disappeared. The sadness that once filled her heart had slowly been replaced by confidence. She understood that losing someone's trust could be painful, but losing respect for yourself was even worse. She had protected the one thing that truly mattered, her dignity. As the evening came to an end, she stepped outside and looked toward the peaceful night sky. She thought back to the difficult months that had brought her here. If someone had told her then that one painful chapter would lead to a stronger future, she might not have believed it. Now she knew better. Life often writes unexpected endings. Sometimes the greatest victory is not proving someone else wrong. It is proving to yourself that kindness is stronger than bitterness, honesty is stronger than pride, and self-respect is worth more than all the wealth in the world. She walked toward her car with a calm smile, ready for whatever tomorrow would bring. This time, she was not living in anyone else's shadow. She was writing her own story, one peaceful step at a time. And that story had only just begun.